Imagine spending 30 years in prison for a crime you didn't commit. Every sunrise behind bars, every moment stolen. For Anthony Wright, this was not a nightmare. It was his reality, until one tiny piece of DNA evidence finally set him free. In 1991, a 20-year-old man named Anthony Wright was arrested for the brutal murder of his neighbor, Louise Talley, in Philadelphia. The evidence? A confession he says was coerced, and clothing the police claimed he wore during the crime. There was no DNA testing back then to prove otherwise. Louise Talley was 77 years old when she was found stabbed and assaulted in her own home. The community was outraged, and the police were under immense pressure to find the killer quickly. They turned to Anthony Wright, a young father with no history of violence, who insisted he was innocent. But under intense interrogation, Anthony claims he was forced to sign a confession he didn't write after hours of threats and fear. The police said they found clothing in Anthony's home matching what the killer was believed to have worn. And with that, Anthony was convicted of first-degree murder, sentenced to life without parole. Anthony was just 20 years old. For years, Anthony maintained his innocence, writing letters begging for the evidence to be tested for DNA. In 2014, over 2 decades later, the Innocence Project took on Anthony's case. They pushed for DNA testing on the clothing, and evidence the prosecution had relied upon to put Anthony away. The results were shocking. DNA from the clothing did not match Anthony Wright. DNA found inside the victim's body also did not match Anthony. Instead, the DNA matched a known serial offender who had died in prison years earlier. Everything Anthony had been saying for 23 years was true. Even with DNA evidence proving he was not the killer, prosecutors insisted on retrying Anthony, determined not to admit their mistake. In 2016, Anthony faced a new trial. But this time, the jury saw the truth. After a 2-week retrial, it took them less than an hour to find Anthony Wright not guilty of all charges. Anthony was finally free after 25 years in prison, but the years lost could never be returned. Anthony Wright walked out of the courtroom, free, but into a world that had moved on without him. His son, just a toddler when he was arrested, was now an adult. The city of Philadelphia eventually agreed to pay Anthony a settlement, but no amount of money could give him back the years he missed. His case has since become a powerful example of how wrongful convictions can happen, how coerced confessions can steal lives, and how DNA evidence can reveal the truth even after decades. Anthony's story is just one of many. According to the Innocence Project, over 375 people in the United States have been exonerated by DNA testing, many of whom served decades for crimes they did not commit. If you believe stories like Anthony's need be heard, share this video so more people understand how fragile justice can be. And let us know in the comments, do you think the system did enough to correct this injustice? Thank you for watching.